My name is Janet, and I am 54 years old. I clean houses for a living, a job that supported my son and me after my divorce 5 years ago. Nothing prepared me for the sting of hearing William call me ordinary at his birthday party, comparing me to his father's new wife and her Malibu beach house. I smiled, said nothing, and quietly left the party with my dignity intact. Just 1 hour later, my phone exploded with 25 missed calls from my panicking son. Let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. Some words can break a mother's heart, but life has its own way of teaching valuable lessons. I grew up with dirt under my fingernails and pride in my heart. My parents owned a small farm in rural Pennsylvania, where hard work wasn't a virtue, it was a necessity. Every morning before school, I helped milk cows and collect eggs. Every evening, I helped with dinner and homework for my younger siblings. My parents instilled in me the belief that honest work, no matter how humble, carried dignity. I was the first in my family to attend college, working 3 jobs to pay tuition at Penn State. I was studying business administration and had dreams of opening my own shop someday. Then during my junior year, I met Richard Harrison at a campus party. He was in law school, handsome and ambitious, with a confidence that took my breath away. Our whirlwind romance led to an unexpected pregnancy. I dropped out of college to have William believing Richard's promises that I could return to school later. We married quickly in a small ceremony, and I threw myself into being the best wife and mother I could be. For 15 years, I supported Richard's career. I hosted dinner parties for his colleagues, maintained our home, perfectly volunteered at William's school, and handled every aspect of family life. Richard became a successful corporate attorney, eventually making partner at a prestigious firm in Los Angeles. We moved into a beautiful house in an exclusive neighborhood. From the outside, our life looked perfect. I never returned to college. Every time I mentioned finishing my degree, there was always a reason to postpone it. William needed attention for a school project. Richard had an important client dinner. The timing wasn't right. Eventually, I stopped asking. The end of our marriage wasn't dramatic. One evening, 5 years ago, Richard came home and simply announced he had fallen in love with his 27-year-old legal assistant, Veronica. He wanted a divorce. Just like that, 15 years of marriage dissolved like sugar in rain. California is a community property state, so I received half of our assets. It seemed fair on paper, but Richard had the earning potential of a corporate lawyer, while I had a 15-year gap on my resume. My share quickly dwindled as I established a new home and paid for everyday expenses. I had to find work quickly. With no recent job experience and an incomplete degree, my options were limited. I remembered how I had cleaned houses to help pay for college, so I printed flyers and began again at 50 years old. The first year was grueling. My body ached in ways it hadn't when I was 20. Some clients treated me like I was invisible. Others left incredible messes for me to clean up. But slowly, I built a reputation for reliability and thoroughness. Word of mouth brought more clients than I could handle alone. Eventually, I hired Maria, a hardworking immigrant from El Salvador. Then came Lucia, Steve, Patricia, and Joanna. Within 3 years, Janet's pristine cleaning services employed 5 people besides myself. We weren't getting rich, but we were paying our bills and saving a little. Meanwhile, William divided his time between my modest 3-bedroom apartment and Richard's luxurious new home, where Veronica reigned as stepmother. At first, William seemed to adjust well to the divorce. He remained the sweet, thoughtful boy I had raised. The changes began subtly during his sophomore year of high school. William returned from weekends with Richard and Veronica with stories of expensive restaurants, celebrity sightings, and shopping sprees. His clothing gradually transformed from regular teen attire to designer brands. His phone was always the latest model. I couldn't compete with Richard and Veronica's lifestyle, nor did I want to. I believed in teaching William that happiness doesn't come from possessions. But I watched with growing concern as his values seemed to shift. "Mom, why don't you get a better job?" he asked one evening as I soaked my aching feet after a 10-hour workday. Dad says you're smart enough to do something besides cleaning. This is a good job, William, I replied. I built this business from nothing. I employ 5 people who support their families through honest work. He shrugged, unconvinced. I guess. But Veronica says you could go back to school if you really wanted to. These comments increased in frequency. William began avoiding introducing me to his new friends from the private school Richard now paid for. He made excuses about why I couldn't drive him to school functions. When his friends did come over, he seemed embarrassed by our apartment, though I kept it immaculately clean and comfortable. The disconnect between us grew wider, and I felt powerless to bridge it. How could I compete with ski trips to Aspen and summers in Europe? How could I make my son see value beyond price tags? As William's 17th birthday approached, I was determined to throw him a special celebration at my place. I would show him that love and thoughtfulness mattered more than extravagance. I just needed the chance to remind him of who we really were. For weeks, I planned every detail of William's birthday party. I saved from each paycheck to buy ingredients for his favorite foods and the special gifts I knew he wanted. I worked extra houses on weekends to afford the Breitling watch he had been eyeing for months. At $4,000, it represented nearly all my savings. But I wanted him to have something special that would remind him of me. I decorated our apartment with subtle blue and gray streamers, his favorite colors, and arranged framed photos of William throughout his childhood. I baked his favorite chocolate cake with cream cheese frosting from scratch, and prepared his preferred meal of lasagna with garlic bread. Not fancy food, but made with love and the recipes he'd grown up enjoying. When the doorbell rang at 6 o'clock, my heart raced with anticipation. William arrived first, followed by 8 of his friends from Westridge Academy, the private school where Richard had enrolled him after our divorce. "Hi, Mom," William said, barely meeting my eyes as he introduced his friends. "This is Jake, Tyler, Mason, Alicia, Braden, Sophie, Zach, and Dylan." They mumbled polite hellos, their eyes scanning our apartment with barely concealed assessment. I noticed their clothing all designer brands that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Sophie's purse alone looked like it could cover a week's groceries. "Welcome, everyone. The food is ready whenever you're hungry," I said brightly. "William, why don't you show your friends around?" "There's not much to show," he muttered, leading them to the living room where I'd set up music and snacks. I busied myself in the kitchen, giving them space to relax. Through the pass-through window, I watched them settle into awkward conversation. William seemed tense. Nothing like the relaxed, happy boy I remembered. After dinner, which they picked at politely, but barely ate, I brought out the cake with 17 candles blazing. William forced a smile as everyone sang "Happy Birthday." When I handed him the carefully wrapped watch box, he opened it with feigned enthusiasm. "Thanks, Mom," he said, barely looking at the watch before setting it aside. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. He had been begging for that specific model for months. As I cleaned up in the kitchen, I overheard William talking to his friends, unaware I could hear them through the open window. "So, are we still on for Malibu next weekend?" Jake asked. "Yeah, Dad and Veronica just bought this sick beach house," William replied. "Private access to the beach infinity pool, the works. They're letting me bring friends to break it in." "Your dad's killing it," Mason said admiringly. "What does he do again?" "He's senior partner at Harrison Weinstein and more. They handle all the big entertainment industry contracts." "And your mom?" Sophie asked, glancing toward the kitchen. "What did she do before, you know?" There was a pause, and I froze by the sink dishcloth in hand. "Nothing special," William replied, his voice loud enough to carry clearly. "My dad supported us. After the divorce, she had to get a job. At least my dad is living a successful life. My mom, she's just ordinary. She cleans other people's houses for a living. Meanwhile, Dad's new wife just bought a vacation home in Malibu." The words hit me like a physical blow. I had to grip the counter to steady myself. "Dude, that's harsh." I heard someone say quietly. It's just facts, William replied dismissively. Dad's life is where it's at. This place is, well, you can see for yourselves. Some of his friends laughed awkwardly. Others fell silent, clearly uncomfortable. I stood motionless in the kitchen, tears welling in my eyes. Ordinary. The word echoed in my mind. Was that how my son saw me? Just an ordinary woman cleaning houses? Had he forgotten all I'd sacrificed for him? Taking a deep breath, I wiped my eyes and composed myself. I walked back into the living room with a smile fixed firmly on my face. William immediately stopped talking, a flash of guilt crossing his features. I need to run out for more ice cream, I lied smoothly. You kids enjoy yourselves. There's plenty of food and drinks in the refrigerator. You don't have to go, Mom, William said half-heartedly. It's no trouble. I'll be back soon. I gathered my purse and keys, maintaining my dignity every step to the door. As I left, I heard the music volume increase and conversation resume. In my car, I placed the envelope containing my birthday card for William on the passenger seat. Inside was a note explaining that I'd been called away for an emergency cleaning job, along with birthday wishes, and a reminder that I loved him unconditionally. I drove away from my apartment, tears finally falling freely down my face. My son was ashamed of me, of my work, of our life together. The knowledge hurt more than anything Richard had ever done to me. I drove aimlessly for nearly an hour, eventually finding myself at Dockweiler Beach. The sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the sky in vivid oranges and pinks that seemed to mock my inner darkness. I parked and walked to the shore, allowing the rhythm of the waves to calm my racing thoughts. Sitting on the sand, I thought about my life, the choices I'd made, and the son who now saw me as nothing more than ordinary. I thought about Richard and Veronica with their Malibu beach house and glamorous lifestyle. Had I failed William by not providing him with material wealth? Or had I failed him in a deeper way by not teaching him to value what truly matters? My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Maria, my first employee, and now my closest friend. Janet, are you okay? I thought you'd be busy with William's party. The kindness in her voice broke the dam, and I found myself sobbing as I explained what happened. That little ingrate, Maria exclaimed. After everything you've done for him. I don't know where I went wrong, I whispered. When did money become more important than character, than family? You didn't go wrong, Maria said firmly. Richard and his trophy wife are poisoning him with their values, and maybe you've been too soft, too accommodating. Children need boundaries, even teenagers. Her words struck a chord. Had I been too eager to please William after the divorce, too afraid of losing him to Richard's flashier lifestyle? Had my own insecurities about being just a house cleaner affected how I presented myself to my son? As we talked, a plan began forming in my mind. Perhaps it was time William learned some hard truths about privilege, responsibility, and the meaning of ordinary. I think I know what I need to do, I told Maria. Remember that project I've been working on? The one I told no one about, not even William? The app, Are You Going to New York for the investor meeting? Yes, it's time to activate my emergency plan. I had been secretly developing a business idea for nearly 2 years, an app connecting homeowners with vetted, fairly paid cleaning professionals, cutting out exploitative middlemen agencies. I'd taught myself coding basics through free online courses, worked with a developer friend who believed in the concept, and had finally secured a meeting with potential investors in New York. I'd kept it quiet, working late into the night after William was asleep, afraid of failure. Now it seemed the universe was pushing me to take the leap. I called my neighbor, Mrs. Abernathy, a retired teacher who often kept an eye on things when I worked late. How's the party going? I asked casually. They all left about 20 minutes ago, she reported. Piled into some fancy cars and drove off. Quite a racket they made. So William and his friends had abandoned the party I'd worked so hard to prepare. That made my decision easier. I returned to my apartment, finding it empty but messy. Plates of barely touched food sat abandoned. Cups half full of soda cluttered every surface. The birthday cake remained largely uneaten, my hours of baking dismissed without a thought. Working quickly, I packed a small suitcase with essentials for a few days. I wrote a note explaining that an emergency work situation required my immediate attention out of town. I left information about food in the refrigerator and reminded William he could always call his father if he needed anything. I didn't mention hearing his cruel words. That conversation would need to happen face to face when I returned. As I prepared to leave, I noticed William had left behind the Breitling watch still in its box on the coffee table. The sight steeled my resolve. It was time my son learned some valuable lessons about respect, gratitude, and the true meaning of success. I placed my phone on airplane mode, not ready to deal with William's inevitable calls when he returned to an empty apartment. My flight to New York wasn't until morning, but I decided to check into an airport hotel for the night. I needed space and time to prepare for what might be the most important presentation of my life. As I drove away from my apartment for the second time that evening, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and liberation. My son had called me ordinary, and perhaps, by the world's materialistic standards, I was. But I was about to show him that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when pushed to their limits. What I couldn't know as I checked into my airport hotel was that William's evening was spiraling into disaster. After leaving my apartment, William and his friends decided the party was too tame. Mason suggested they go to the abandoned Westfield property, a half-constructed luxury housing development that had been stalled by legal disputes for years. It had become an unofficial party spot for teenagers looking to escape supervision. "My brother left some beer there yesterday," Mason said, "hidden behind the foundation of Building C." The group piled into 3 cars. William rode with Jake, who had received a BMW for his own birthday 2 months earlier. They stopped at a convenience store where an older friend of Dylan's purchased additional alcohol. The abandoned construction site was isolated enough to avoid immediate detection, but close enough to the city to be easily accessible. When they arrived, they found Mason's beer cache intact. Music blaring from portable speakers, they began drinking, determined to salvage the night. "To William and his awesome beach house weekend coming up," Tyler toasted, raising a beer can. William, already feeling guilty about the way he'd treated me, but unwilling to admit it, drank deeply. The alcohol provided a welcome numbness to his conflicted emotions. As the night progressed, more teenagers arrived. Word of mouth had spread that there was a party with free alcohol. Many were strangers to William, older kids from public schools with reputations for trouble. By 10:30, over 20 teenagers crowded the construction site. Someone produced marijuana. Another group arrived with pills they claimed were just pharmaceutical-grade Adderall for staying awake. The original intimate gathering had transformed into something much darker. William, now quite drunk, was showing off to impress some girls who had just arrived. "My dad's taking us all to Malibu next weekend," he boasted, gesturing grandly and sloshing beer onto his expensive shoes. "Private beach access, no parents. It's going to be epic." "Your dad sounds cool," one of the girls said. "What about your mom? She's strict." William's face clouded. "My mom, she cleans toilets for a living." The words came out more harshly than he intended, the alcohol loosening his inhibitions. One of the older boys, someone William didn't know, overheard. "You're talking shit about your own mother? That's cold, man." "Mind your own business," William slurred. "Or what rich boy?" the stranger challenged, stepping closer. Jake tried to intervene. "Hey, we're just here to celebrate. No need for drama." The tension might have dissipated if Mason hadn't chosen that moment to play with a construction flare he'd found, accidentally igniting it. The sudden bright light and smoke startled everyone. Someone screamed. In the confusion, a fight broke out between William's friends and the older group. A girl called 911 reporting what sounded like a riot at the abandoned construction site. Within minutes, police sirens wailed in the distance. Panic ensued. Teenagers scattered in all directions. Some made it to their cars. Others, including William, were too disoriented or drunk to escape effectively. When police arrived, they found William, Jake, Mason, Sophie, and 7 other teens they didn't know, along with evidence of underage drinking marijuana and prescription pills. All were taken into custody. At the police station, they were processed for underage drinking. Those caught with drugs faced more serious charges. William, terrified and suddenly sobered by the reality of his situation, was allowed one phone call. He tried calling me repeatedly, fingers shaking as he dialed my number. Each call went straight to voicemail. "Mom, please pick up," he pleaded in his 15th message. "I'm at the police station. They're saying I might have to spend the night in juvenile detention. I need you." After 25 failed attempts to reach me, William finally called his father. Richard, however, was in Chicago for an important conference and couldn't get a flight back until morning. "What were you thinking?" Richard demanded over the phone. "Do you have any idea how this could affect your college applications, your future? Where's your mother in all this?" "I don't know," William admitted, tears streaming down his face. "She's not answering her phone." "Typical," Richard scoffed. "When you actually need her, she's nowhere to be found. I'll call my attorney and see what he can do remotely. Sit tight and don't say anything to anyone until he contacts the station." Despite Richard's attorney making calls, the process moved slowly. With evidence of both alcohol and drugs at the scene and multiple minors involved, the police were processing everything by the book. William, as a first-time offender with no drugs in his immediate possession, was placed in an overnight holding area for minors rather than being released. For the first time in his life, William spent a night in a cell-like environment. His designer clothes and privileged attitude meant nothing here. As he sat on the hard bench, he thought about the cruel words he'd said about me, the mother who had always been there for him, the mother he'd dismissed as ordinary. "I just want my mom," he whispered to himself, a truth he'd been denying for too long. While William faced the consequences of his actions, I was entirely unaware of the unfolding crisis. After checking into the airport hotel, I had taken a long shower and fallen into an exhausted sleep. My phone remained on airplane mode, the notifications of William's increasingly desperate calls silently accumulating. My flight to New York departed at 6 a.m. By the time I landed at JFK and switched my phone back to normal mode, I was greeted with the shocking cascade of missed calls, voicemails, and texts. 25 missed calls from William, 10 from Richard, 3 from the Los Angeles Police Department. My heart nearly stopped as I listened to the first voicemail, hearing my son's terrified voice explaining he'd been arrested. My first instinct was to book an immediate return flight. My son needed me. But as I continued listening to the messages, learning more details about what had happened, I began to see the situation differently. The final message was from Richard, left just 30 minutes earlier. "Janet, I've handled everything. William is being released to my custody this morning. This is exactly why he needs more structure and supervision than you can provide with your work schedule. We'll be discussing a change in the custody arrangement. Call me when you decide to start answering your phone." Richard's condescending tone ignited something in me. For years, I had allowed him to make me feel less than to question my worth as a parent because I couldn't provide the material advantages he could. Not anymore. I called Richard back immediately. "Finally decided to be responsible," he answered, his voice dripping with contempt. "I was on a flight to New York," I replied calmly. "Business trip." "Business trip? You clean houses, Janet. What kind of business trip could possibly be so important that you'd leave our 17-year-old son unsupervised?" I took a deep breath. First, William is old enough to spend an evening alone. Second, He wasn't supposed to be alone. He was hosting a birthday party that I carefully prepared before being called away. And third, my business is none of your concern, Richard. It becomes my concern when our son ends up in juvenile detention. Do you have any idea how serious this could have been? There were drugs at that party. And was that my fault? Was I the one who taught him that material things and status are all that matter? Was I the one who showed him that old wives can be discarded for younger models when they're no longer convenient? Richard fell silent for a moment. This isn't about us, Janet. It's about William. You're right. It is about William. It's about the values he's learning and the man he's becoming. I'm in New York for an important meeting that could change both our lives. I'll be back in 3 days. Until then, I trust you can handle the situation you're so quick to blame me for. 3 days, Janet, there's going to be a hearing about the underage drinking charges. He needs his mother. And he has needed his father to teach him respect, responsibility, and the value of hard work. We all have disappointments, Richard. I'll call William directly. I ended the call before Richard could respond. My hands were shaking, but I felt stronger than I had in years. For too long, I had allowed Richard's perceived success to diminish my own accomplishments. For too long, I had tried to compensate for the material advantages I couldn't provide by being overly permissive with William. No more. I would attend my meeting with the potential investors. I would present my vision for Clean Connect. And when I returned home, William and I would have a long overdue conversation about respect values and what it truly means to be ordinary. I called William next. He answered immediately, his voice small and frightened in a way I hadn't heard since he was a little boy. Mom, where are you? Why didn't you answer your phone? I'm in New York, William. I had an early flight for an important business meeting. Business meeting? But you never go on business trips. There are many things about me you don't know, William. Things you've never bothered to ask. His voice cracked. Mom, I was arrested. I spent the night in juvenile detention. I know. I got your messages when I landed. Are you safe now? Are you with your father? Yeah, he picked me up this morning. He's really mad. As am I, William. Not just about the drinking and the arrest, though those are serious enough. I'm disappointed in the things you said about me to your friends. There was a pause. You heard that. I heard everything. I heard you call me ordinary. I heard you dismiss the work I do to keep a roof over our heads and food on our table. I heard the shame in your voice when you compared me to Veronica. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I was just trying to impress my friends. By disparaging your mother, is that the kind of man you want to be, William? He began to cry softly. No, I was stupid. I was wrong. When can you come home? I need you here. I'll be back in 3 days. Until then, you'll stay with your father. We'll talk properly when I return. 3 days. But Mom, there's a hearing about the drinking charges. Dad says I could get community service or worse. Then perhaps this will be an opportunity for you to experience what it's like to work without pay to serve others instead of expecting to be served. Some valuable lessons come from difficult experiences, William. You're not coming back for my hearing. He sounded genuinely shocked. Your father and his expensive attorneys can handle the legal issues. I have important work to do here in New York, work that you might better understand and appreciate when I return. As I ended the call, I felt a mixture of guilt and resolve. The old Janet would have dropped everything and rushed back to rescue William from the consequences of his actions. But that approach hadn't taught him to respect me or himself. It was time for a new strategy. I spent the rest of the day preparing for my meeting, pushing thoughts of William's situation to the back of my mind. Tomorrow, I would present my vision for revolutionizing the home cleaning industry to people who could help make it a reality. For once, my dreams would take priority. I had spent 2 years developing Clean Connect, teaching myself basic coding through free online courses while William slept. I had networked with other cleaning service owners, researched the industry thoroughly, and created a comprehensive business plan. The app would connect homeowners directly with vetted, insured cleaning professionals. Unlike existing services that took up to 50% of the cleaner's earnings, Clean Connect would charge a small flat fee, ensuring the workers received fair compensation. It would include features like secure payment processing, scheduling special requests, and quality assurance. I stood before the panel of 5 investors, all successful women who had started businesses after 40. This was the culmination of the Second Chance Entrepreneurs program I had discovered online and applied to secretly. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice steadier than I felt. The residential cleaning industry is worth over $40 billion annually in the United States alone. Yet the people who do the actual cleaning, predominantly women and immigrants, receive a fraction of what clients pay because of predatory agency models. For the next 20 minutes, I outlined my vision, the market research, the prototype I had developed with a programmer friend who took equity instead of payment, and the potential for scaling nationwide. "What makes you qualified to disrupt this industry?" asked Sofia Menendez, a stern-looking venture capitalist with salt and pepper hair. "I've been cleaning houses for 5 years," I replied without hesitation. Before that, I spent 15 years managing a household and supporting my husband's career. I understand both sides of the equation, what clients want and what cleaning professionals need to succeed. I've built a small but successful cleaning business from nothing, currently employing 5 people who support their families through their work. "And why should we believe you can scale this from a local operation to a national platform?" questioned another investor. I smiled. "Because I'm not ordinary. I'm extraordinary in my determination, my work ethic, and my understanding of this market. I've been underestimated my entire life, and I've consistently exceeded expectations. Give me the opportunity, and I'll do it again." The room fell silent. Then Sophia smiled. "Well, I certainly wouldn't bet against you, Janet." By the end of the meeting, I had secured initial funding commitments. The next 2 days were a whirlwind of follow-up meetings, legal consultations, and strategy sessions with a development team the investors connected me with. Throughout it all, I kept in touch with William through brief text messages, neither ignoring him nor rushing to his rescue. Richard handled the court appearance, resulting in 40 hours of community service and a mandatory alcohol education program for William. On my final night in New York, I received a text from William that brought tears to my eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom. Not just for what I said, but for not seeing how amazing you really are. Please, come home soon. I need to talk to you." For the first time since his birthday party, I allowed myself to fully feel the pain his words had caused, but also the hope that this crisis might become a turning point in our relationship. I boarded my flight home with both trepidation and determination. It was time for William to learn who his mother really was. I arrived home to find my apartment spotlessly clean. The mess from the birthday party was gone, the dishes washed and put away, the floors vacuumed. On the kitchen table sat a vase of fresh flowers and a handwritten note. "Welcome home, Mom. I love you. William." William himself arrived 30 minutes later, driven by Richard. To my surprise, Richard asked if he could come in as well. "We need to talk, all 3 of us," he said, uncharacteristically subdued. We sat in my living room, an awkward triangle of complicated history. William looked terrible with dark circles under his eyes and none of his usual cockiness. "Mom, I'm so sorry," he began immediately. "What I said at my party was cruel and untrue. You're not ordinary. You're extraordinary, and I was too stupid and shallow to see it." "Why?" I asked simply. "Why would you say those things about me, about the work I do to support us?" William looked down at his hands. "I guess I was trying to impress my friends. They all have parents with fancy jobs and big houses. I wanted to seem cool by association through Dad and Veronica. It was easier than admitting my mom cleans houses." "Is there something shameful about cleaning houses?" I pressed. No, I didn't think so before, but then at Westridge, people talk about the help like they're invisible. I started feeling embarrassed, which is so messed up because you've worked so hard for us. Richard cleared his throat. I bear some responsibility here, Janet. I've been less than supportive of your career choices. I may have implied to William that you could do better if you tried harder. Cleaning is honest work, I said firmly. I built a successful small business that employs 5 people who support their families. But that's not all I am. I opened my laptop and showed them the presentation I'd given in New York explaining Clean Connect and the investor interest it had generated. You created an app? William asked, eyes wide with disbelief. I did. For 2 years, I've been working on this while you slept, taking online coding classes, networking with developers, building a business plan, all while running my cleaning business and taking care of our home. William stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. But when did you learn to do all this? I've always been capable, William. I was a business major before I left college to have you. I managed our household finances and social calendar for your father's career. I've always had skills and intelligence. What I lacked was opportunity and confidence. Richard looked genuinely impressed. Janet, this is remarkable. Why didn't you ever mention any of this? Would you have listened, Richard? Or would you have dismissed it as a cute hobby, the way you dismissed my desire to finish my degree all those years? He had the grace to look ashamed. I turned back to William. Now let's discuss what happened after your party. You were arrested for underage drinking. You spent a night in juvenile detention. You've been sentenced to community service. These are serious consequences for serious mistakes. William nodded miserably. I know. It was the worst night of my life. I kept calling you, but you didn't answer, and I was so scared. Good, I said firmly. You should have been scared. Actions have consequences, William. The privileged bubble your father and I created for you isn't the real world. In the real world, people face repercussions for their choices. That's harsh, Janet, Richard interjected. Is it, or is it the lesson he should have learned years ago? William needs to understand that respect, responsibility, and integrity matter more than material possessions or social status. Unexpectedly, a fourth voice joined the conversation. She's right, Richard. We all turned to see Veronica standing in the doorway. Richard must have texted her our location. Veronica, this is a private family discussion, Richard began. And I'm part of this family now, she replied, stepping into the room. She turned to me. Janet, I owe you an apology. I've contributed to William's attitude by spoiling him trying to buy his affection. I never had a family growing up, and I wanted so badly for him to like me that I became more of an enabler than a parent. This was the last thing I had expected. Veronica, the woman I'd resented for years, was acknowledging her role in William's behavior. When Richard told me what William said about you at the party, I was horrified, she continued. My mother cleaned houses, worked 2 jobs to support us. There's nothing ordinary about that kind of dedication and sacrifice. William looked between all 3 of us adults, seeming smaller and younger than his 17 years. So, what happens now? He asked quietly. Now. I said, we establish new boundaries and expectations. You'll complete your community service without complaint. You'll work part-time at my cleaning company on weekends to understand the value of physical labor. Your allowance is suspended until you demonstrate more responsibility and respect. That seems fair, Richard said, surprising me with his support. Additionally, I continued, you'll help me with the development of Clean Connect when appropriate. You're good with technology, and this could be a valuable learning experience about entrepreneurship. William nodded. I'd like that. I want to make things right, Mom. I want to be someone you can be proud of again. His words touched me deeply, but I maintained my composure. Actions speak louder than words, William. Show me through your behavior that you've learned from this experience. As our difficult conversation concluded, I felt a shift in our family dynamic. For the first time since the divorce, Richard was treating me as an equal. William was seeing me as a whole person with dreams and capabilities, not just his mother. And I was standing firmly in my own power, no longer allowing others to define my worth. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. William had a lot to prove, and our relationship needed significant repair. But as they left my apartment that evening, I felt cautiously optimistic. Sometimes painful words can lead to necessary growth. Sometimes a crisis becomes the catalyst for positive change. 6 months passed, bringing remarkable transformations to all our lives. The initial funding for Clean Connect allowed me to hire a professional development team to refine the app, which launched in Los Angeles as a beta test. We quickly signed up over 100 cleaning professionals and 500 clients, with a waiting list growing daily. William completed his community service at a local homeless shelter, an experience that profoundly affected him. "These people have real problems, Mom," he told me after his first week. "Not like worrying about having the latest phone or the coolest clothes. Some of them were successful once, but lost everything through addiction or mental illness or just bad luck. It makes me realize how privileged I've been." True to our agreement, William worked weekends with my cleaning service, experiencing firsthand the physical demands of the job and interacting with clients of all backgrounds. Initially, he complained about backaches and calloused hands, but gradually developed pride in a job well done. "Mrs. Goldstein said I did the best job she's ever seen on her bathrooms," he announced one Saturday, beaming with unexpected satisfaction. Richard surprisingly became a vocal supporter of both William's new responsibilities and my business venture. "Janet always had a good head for business," he told colleagues, some of whom became early Clean Connect investors. Our co-parenting relationship improved dramatically, built on newfound mutual respect. Even Veronica evolved from trophy wife to genuine stepmother, setting boundaries and reinforcing the values William was learning from me. "My mother would be proud of you," she told me during a rare moment alone. "She always said honest work shapes character." I think William is finally understanding that. As Clean Connect gained traction, I was able to purchase a comfortable 3-bedroom house near the beach in Playa del Rey. Not Malibu, certainly, but a beautiful home with a garden and enough space to entertain. I helped my employees become independent contractors through the app, increasing their earnings substantially while maintaining our team bond. For William's 18th birthday, we planned a very different celebration from the previous year's disaster. He insisted on a small gathering at our new home, with just a few close friends he'd met through his community service and part-time job, plus Richard and Veronica. To my surprise, William insisted on preparing the entire dinner himself, a skill he'd been developing with unexpected enthusiasm. "Cooking is actually really satisfying," he explained. "You work hard and create something that brings people together. It's kind of like what you do with your business." The guests who arrived were nothing like William's previous friends. Marcus volunteered at the homeless shelter. Aisha was the daughter of one of my cleaning employees. Taylor was a scholarship student at Westridge, whom William had befriended after noticing him eating lunch alone. After dinner, William presented me with a gift, a handcrafted album filled with photographs documenting our journey together, from his earliest baby pictures to recent images of us working side by side. "Read the inside cover," he urged. I opened to the first page, where he had written, "To my extraordinary mother, who taught me that true success is measured in character, not possessions. Thank you for never giving up on me even when I couldn't see your worth. I see it clearly now, and I hope to become half the person you are. Love always, William." Tears filled my eyes as I embraced my son, feeling the healing of a wound I had feared might never close. Later that evening, as our guests departed, William helped me clean up the kitchen, a simple domestic task that now carried deeper meaning for both of us. "You know what I realized, Mom," he said thoughtfully, drying a serving platter. "Being ordinary isn't something to be ashamed of. Most of the world is ordinary people doing their best every day. The real shame is in looking down on that in thinking you're somehow better because you have more stuff. I smiled at my son, marveling at his growth. That's very insightful, William. I learned from the best, he replied. An ordinary mom who turned out to be the most extraordinary person I know. The journey from that painful birthday party to this moment had been difficult but necessary. William had learned that words can wound deeply, but also that actions can heal. He had discovered the dignity in all forms of honest work and the emptiness of status built solely on material wealth. As for me, I had reclaimed my voice, my confidence, and my dreams. The cleaning business that William had once been ashamed of had become the foundation for an innovative company that might help thousands of workers like me receive fair compensation for their labor. Sometimes, life's most painful moments become our greatest opportunities for growth. Sometimes, being called ordinary leads to the discovery of just how extraordinary you truly are. Have you ever had a painful comment become the catalyst for positive change in your life? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to be reminded of their extraordinary worth. Thank you for joining me today, and remember that true value comes from character, not possessions or status.